Gary is hiding inside a barrel, listening to pirates take over his ship, and trying to remember whether flour normally breathes this loudly. He has been a merchant sailor for 6 years. He is owed 14 months of wages. In the next hour, he will receive the best job offer of his entire life. Because in the Caribbean around 1720, the most generous, most democratic, most insurance-minded employers on the ocean were criminals, and accepting their employment contract was a hanging offense. To understand the terrible decision Gary is about to make, you have to understand the job he already has. A merchant sailor around 1700 earned roughly 25 shillings a month, in theory. In practice, owners held the money back until the end of the voyage, sometimes for years, so that nobody could afford to quit. The food was ship's biscuit, which came with free weevils, and salted meat of no confirmed species. The water went green in the cask, and then you drank it anyway. Discipline was the captain, who could flog a man for slowness, for clumsiness, or for a facial expression he did not care for. Courts on land almost never questioned him. Sailors of Gary's generation had a phrase for their situation: caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. The devil had a salary schedule, and it was 14 months behind. So when armed men pour over the rail, Gary expects violence, robbery, and death, roughly in that order. What actually happens is stranger. The pirates line up the crew and hold a job interview. Their first question is not about cargo. It is about management. How does your captain treat you? This was standard pirate procedure, and it is documented in trial records. Captains with kind crews were often let go with a handshake. Cruel captains were flogged, sometimes with their own whip, by their own former sailors. Gary's crew answers the question without saying a word. They all look at the captain. The captain looks at the sea, which suddenly interests him very much. Then the pirates make their offer, and here Gary learns a fact almost nobody remembers about pirates. They had a written constitution. Every crew sailed under a signed document called the Articles. Before you joined, they were read aloud to you, which already made pirates more transparent than most of Gary's previous employers. The Articles said this: every man gets a vote. Every man gets an equal share of the loot. The captain is elected and can be voted out again if the crew stops liking him. The captain gets 2 shares to an ordinary man's 1. Gary's merchant captain earned 5 times a sailor's pay and could not be voted out of anything. To keep the captain honest, the crew also elected a quartermaster, whose entire job was to say no to the captain. Pirates had invented the ocean's first middle management, and its only beloved one. And then there is the clause that makes Gary sit down. Compensation for injuries, in writing, paid from the common stock. The crew that has captured Gary sails under Bartholomew Roberts, whose articles are specific. 800 pieces of 8 for the loss of a limb, and smaller sums for smaller losses. This was an old pirate tradition by then. A surgeon who sailed with the buccaneers wrote down their rates in the 1670s: 600 pieces of 8 for a right arm, 500 for a left, 100 for an eye or a finger. Gary has spent 6 years in a legal job where losing an arm meant losing the job. The criminals are offering him workers' compensation, a pension of sorts, and a say in company strategy. There are house rules, and they are not what Gary expects. On Roberts's ship, there is no gambling for money, because gambling starts fights. Lights out at 8 o'clock. The most feared pirate crew in the Atlantic has a bedtime. There is a ship's band, and the Articles guarantee the musicians 1 day of rest a week. The pirates have better labor protections for their entertainment staff than England has for its sailors. Roberts himself turns out to be a tall Welshman in a crimson waistcoat who drinks tea, dislikes drunkenness, and has captured somewhere around 400 ships. Gary was expecting a monster, and has instead met the most successful manager he has ever seen. Gary asks his one careful question, the one he always asks employers: what happens if this goes wrong? The quartermaster, to his credit, answers honestly. What happens is the law. Since the Piracy Act of 1698, England could try pirates in the colonies, in admiralty courts, close to the scene. Convicted men were hanged in batches on beaches and harbor fronts as public advertising. In London, the venue was Execution Dock on the Thames, where pirates were hanged at the low tide mark with a short rope. The bodies were left until 3 tides had washed over them, because the sea was legally part of the sentence. Gary has heard of Captain Kidd, who hanged there in 1701. The rope broke on the first attempt, so they hanged him again, then tarred his body and displayed it in an iron cage by the river for years, as a career warning to men exactly like Gary. He has also heard of Henry Every, who took a Muggle treasure ship in 1695 and set off the first worldwide manhunt in history. Every's men got about £1,000 each, which was several decades of honest wages earned in one afternoon. Every himself vanished and was never caught. 6 of his ordinary sailors were caught, and a jury acquitted them. The government simply held another trial on a fresh charge, convicted them, and hanged 5 at Execution Dock. Gary notices the pattern immediately. The famous captain disappears. The ordinary sailor with 14 months of back pay is the one who fits the rope. There was, briefly, an exit. In 1717, the king offered a free pardon to any pirate who surrendered, and hundreds of them lined up at Nassau to take it. That pardon window closed in 1718. It is now 1720. Gary has missed the door out by 2 years, arriving as usual exactly on time for the consequences and slightly late for everything else. So Gary does not sign, and this is where he learns that the articles have one more clause, the one nobody advertises. Men with useful skills do not get a choice. Pirates routinely forced carpenters, coopers, surgeons, and musicians to serve. Gary, who can mend rigging and carry a tune, is informed that he has been hired. Forced men knew the noose did not care much about consent, so they built paper defenses. They begged the pirates for written certificates stating they were forced, and their families back home placed newspaper notices announcing it in advance for the jury. Gary, standing on a pirate deck 1,000 miles from the nearest printing press, is unable to place an ad. His legal strategy is now a facial expression. Life aboard is the strange part. Gary eats fresh meat, sleeps a full night, and watches the crew vote on where to sail next. Gary votes for somewhere with no navy in it. The motion fails. When they take a prize, Gary's single share is worth more than his entire unpaid merchant salary. He stares at the coins with the specific discomfort of a man whose best employer to date is wanted in 4 empires. But the arithmetic in the other column keeps moving too. The average pirate career in these years lasts about 2 years, and it rarely ends with retirement. Gary does not know that Roberts has about 2 years left, that a Navy warship will kill him with grape shot off the African coast, and that 52 of this cheerful, well-rested crew will be hanged after the largest pirate trial of the age. Gary only knows the shape of the thing, the way you know a storm from the first drop in pressure. Then the exit opens by accident. The next captured ship contains an actual carpenter and an actual fiddler, both more useful than Gary, which is the least surprising fact in this story. Under the unwritten rules for forced men, replacements mean release. Gary is put ashore at the next island with his certificate, his share, and his life, 3 things almost no one walks off a pirate ship holding. At the harbor office, Gary signs onto a legal merchant ship. The clerk explains that wages will be paid at the end of the voyage. The biscuit, he confirms, contains weevils, no vote, no insurance, no compensation for lost limbs, and no bedtime, all of it perfectly legal. And somewhere over the horizon, the men with the written constitution, the health plan, and the well-rested band are being hunted to extinction. Within the decade, the golden age of piracy is over. The withheld wages outlive it by a century. Gary's troubles are not confined to 1 century. History is long, and Gary lives in all of it.